MTTB Music Podcast.
Yeah. Hello, it's Saturday. Can't remember the last time we did a Saturday.
Years.
Yeah.
Years since.
Really years ago.
Since we did a Saturday one.
Yeah.
It's different, isn't it? It's like daylight.
Yeah, it's like literally just gone lunchtime and...
the only drink you've offered me so far is a cup of tea.
I know.
Which was very nice, by the way.
That's what 2023 is all about.
Living healthier.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, until after the podcast. And then perhaps less healthy. Anyway, welcome to 2023. We are going to try harder this year, honest.
Yeah.
Because last year we got a bit rubbish again.
Yeah, I know. It's ironic, isn't it? We went through all through that pandemic. You may remember that pandemic. And now, and then we come out of it. I think it's just the world. There was just too much going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, we just got confused by the amount of prime ministers or something, I think.
Yeah, it was something with that, yeah.
Anyway, so it's a new year, same format, same people. So today we're going to pass thoughts on Billy Nomates, Cacti, Belle and Sebastian, late developers, Margot Price Strays, Rozi Plain Prize, Clavvish Rap Game Awful, and VV Neon Noir. So we're going to kick off with the second album by Billy Nomates. I think real name is Tor Maries. Glad
you cleared that up.
Yeah. I think apparently I think she got the name because she turned up at a gig on her own once and someone literally kind of went, "Who are you, Billy Nomates?"
And she's like, "Yeah, I am now."
Yeah.
Own it.
And that's kind of inspired her to kind of like just take the thing. It's a good moniker to have.
That's
I think.
good,
Yeah. But is she, and more importantly, this album, any good, Peter?
Oh, you're coming to me first in the year.
I am, yeah.
Right, okay. Well, Scott, this album actually, as with all these albums, few lessons, always required. That's our golden rule. This album initially, though, was hard to pigeonhole in terms of style. Not that I try and pigeonhole everything I ever listen to.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating listen first time round. And it sort of built on that. The more I listened to it, the more I got out of it, obviously. I thought vocally, some real sort of, I want to say Chrissy Hines, but not Chrissy Hines. But
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I didn't write it down.
This is why I don't try and pigeonhole. But
I didn't write Chrissy Hines down, but I actually wrote Lucinda Williams down later on. But I was going to write Chrissy Hines and Lucinda Williams. So actually,
it's kind of in that sort of Pretenders. But not purely that, because there's the touch of dark electronica here and there as well, and then you get a mix of Americana and country pop up in various places too.
Also mentioned country. So
I finished my notes here with like, is this what the modern indie should sound like? I wrote pretentiously in my notes. I thought it was a really fascinating album, really interesting album to kick off with as well. Particularly liked. The opening track, Balance Is Gone. That's quite, after a few listens, that's quite catchy.
Yeah.
I also liked Spite. That's the one with the dance beat. Despite sounding like the most country of all the tracks on the album, it also has like a consistent dance beat all the way through it as well, which I like too, because it made it sound pop. And what's the other one on here that I wrote down? Black Curtains in the Bag. Not just for the title, but actually I really love that track too.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favourite tracks on the thing as well. I was sort of the same as you. When it first came on, listened to it a few times, and what I liked about it is I like the kind of sparseness of the arrangements. So that it is quite synth and drum beat led, with the occasional kind of blasts of kind of guitar and bass.
Yeah, I like that balance. Very much.
So there's actually not a lot of bass on the album. Black Curtains in the Bag is a perfect example of that. It's got a very sparse drum beat based tune. I also agree with you about how the album flows and how trying to pigeonhole it is interesting, because I thought what made the album interesting was the example of the fact that you get Spite, which is a fuck you angry rock song type thing, but then that's followed by Fauna, and I literally wrote down here that I'd argue is a country song and wouldn't be out of place on any modern album by a country artist. And that was when, for me, it occurred to me that her voice reminded me of Chrissie Hynde and Lucinda Williams, and so it almost had that kind of alt country type vibe to it, including lyrically, where the kind of the type of lyrics that she writes as well. So I could hear almost this entire album suddenly as a kind of single acoustic guitar with some Dobro steel going on in the background. So I was thinking, yeah, actually this is a country record. It's clearly not a country record, but in another world and in different arrangements it could actually be a country record. But then you've got the same gun, which is Hall & Oates Maneater essentially. So you've got some kind of pure 80s pop kind of thrown in there as well. And lyrically, it's quite interesting as well. I really liked the line, "John doesn't open the curtains, and now I know why, when the driver of many is a passenger in his own life." Yeah. I kind of like that.
I did like that, yeah.
And there are a few other kind of lyrics in it that are also quite fun and revealing. Again, it's just seemed to be another artist who's wearing her life lyrically on her sleeve. I think there's a song in there about trying to kill yourself as well, isn't there? Somewhere along the lines.
There is, yes.
And then realising, no, I'm past that kind of thing. And I also liked on Roundabout Sadness, the kind of fairground organ kind of thing, which I really liked, which also reminded me of Todd Rundgren's Night the Carousel Burned Down, kind of a similar theme, but I'm probably the only person that would be reminded of that. But start the year, get a Todd reference in early.
Excellent, well done.
Yeah, yes,
well done. That's your first.
Yeah, it might be the only one, but anyway. So yeah, I thought it was, as you say, an enjoyable new indie album.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Moving on, we go from someone that's on their second album to someone that's on their 12th. That's Belle and Sebastian. And interestingly, that's the only artist on this month's podcast who we've reviewed before. Although it was, we reviewed their 10th album, Girls in Peacetime Wanna Dance, back on podcast 2 2015.
Oh my word.
Yeah, which you described as a great pop record.
Oh, well done. Succinct.
I think it's because that album is when they definitely kind of
does ring a bell.
I think half the record certainly lent itself into kind of Pet Shop Boys dubstar type territory.
Oh, that's interesting. I've got a comment coming up.
But anyway, it's Stuart Murdoch and Sarah Martin back again. And they were one of these bands that have always had a kind of strange and special place in my musical heart to a certain extent. But obviously they're a Glasgow band, so when they started off, they were very much around when I was growing up. They were a band that people either knew and liked. But I've never owned an album from them. Even though I've liked bits and pieces they've done back from days of Boy with the Arab Strap and stuff like that. So I've always kind of, and also I kind of think of them the same way musically as maybe a band like the Decemberists, who amusingly, last time we reviewed the Decemberists was on the same podcast that we reviewed Belle and Sebastian on. And also, amusingly, on that particular podcast we reviewed a Gaz Coombs album, and he was on my long list of 7 albums to review for this podcast.
Oh right, yeah, because I saw he was back. Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
I went for Clavvish instead. For musical variety purposes.
Yeah, well done.
More of Clavvish later.
More of that later.
Yeah.
Lots more.
Yeah. But what I like about them is in some ways, the fact that they change to a certain extent, but then don't change as well. And it's like, what I like is it's an album of pop songs that sounds, one, like an album, and B, it's songs. It's nice hearing songs that haven't been produced within an inch of their lives. You know, haven't been compressed to death after they're officially made, kind of universally loud, auto-tuned. You know, and a bit like with when you get with Paul Heaton and Jackie Abbott, the kind of combination of male and female voices as well, I think, works really, really well with this band. And having said about almost saying it's pop, but old style pop, it is still stuff that could be commercial as well. I mean, I don't know what you see in me particularly. I think perfectly bridges kind of 80s kind of pop vibe and now. I spent my whole time listening to this album, the few times I listened to it, with my foot tapping, it has to be said. You know, from the kind of ba-dum ba-dum dum dum at the start of Juliet Naked, right through an album that kind of takes you to kind of 70s Cat Stevens, also late 70s kind of Soft Boys, Television, R.I.P. Tom Verlaine, who died recently, and then there's hints of like Overload by Sugar Babes on When You're Not With Me. My favourite moment of the album is I can't remember what the track is, but there's a track where Sarah comes in and just says the final line. So Stuart's kind of sang the whole song, and she's joined in on backing vocals and stuff. But the very last line is, "Don't you let me down again." And I thought that was just genius. The fact that it's having been not in the song really at all, she literally has the final line.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. I also like there's a line in it about making a moment between the tick and the tock, which I also quite thought.
Yes, of course.
So just a enjoyable, good pop record.
I agree. I haven't got much to add to all that. I mean, it's in a way you say it was perfect. It's an album from start to finish, and it sounds like an album that's been properly crafted, whatever that means these days. And it's very much a Belle and Sebastian album, but at the same time isn't shy of doing new things. If you're a fan, if you've ever been a fan, you'll love this album. It's got everything you want from it. I can't remember which track it was. I think it was So in the Moment. In addition to your sort of funny lyrics, I want to jump in like Paul McCartney and Wings.
Yes,
it was just so twee. I loved it. And I actually really liked that they veered away from the sort of pop sound of the last album, ironically, and so much so that the track I Don't Know What You See in Me was almost a bit too much Pet Shop Boys for my liking, which is something I'll never say again. But yeah, it jarred slightly, but other than that, I thought it was a really solid album. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very enjoyable record. So, moving on to our third record, and the fourth album by this particular young lady, Margot Price, whose first three albums have all been very well received in the country music world. This is, I said, her fourth record, and one where I think it's fair to say she kind of changes direction a bit. It's not a straight country record. So what did you think of this one, Pete?
I love the organ intro.
Oh,
it's the first thing I've written. My notes. I obviously felt I had to share that. This offers something very different in terms of a country album, or even a new country album. Or I'm not sure it's even a country album all the way through.
No.
It's got, again, Americana, but nods to psychedelia. And there's one track even which reminds me of grunge. There was like a real grunge sort of feel to one of the earlier opening tracks. It's an album I've actually returned to the most on this particular playlist that we've got this time around as well, which I think says something too, in that it's a very enjoyable listen. And I particularly like, I mean, we just talking about Belle and Sebastian, the track Time Machine, which is about halfway through, almost sounds very Belle and Sebastian, having listened to the two albums pretty much back to back. You know,
I hadn't really thought about that, but
yeah. It did make me laugh. Also, what made me laugh is in the track Radio with our old friend, is it Sharon Van Etten?
Sharon Van Etten,
I've got nothing on but the radio. I thought, cheeky. And also, really did like Lydia. That's the acoustic one, right at the end, which is just mellow and grim. But grim,
it is, yes.
Grim good. No, I really, again, this is another one of those is it country? No, not really. Kind of albums that we've enjoyed in the past, and actually this was really rewarding on multiple listens. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's certainly at the start it kicks off very much as a kind of I should say more Americana than country.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the first two tracks are very very rocky.
Yeah, indeed. And kind of like veering towards grunge.
Yeah. In fact, the second song has Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers fame on it. And that almost reminded me very much of kind of 70s rock in a good way. And also, I think that sound, a choice of Jonathan Wilson of Doors to produce it as well is also probably part and parcel of why the record sounds that way.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's not a one-note record musically. It kind of veers off into kind of pop at times, as well as kind of country folk stuff. As you say, Lydia near the end, there's a cracking tune, and also the Radio, but the Sharon Van Etten, and also I think Change of Heart as well. It was also quite poppy in that sense. I also like the lyrics in Hell in the Heartland as well, which also was another quite grim song.
Yes.
I mean, she's just come out. I mean, she's written an autobiography, I think, that came out at the same time as this album, and she recently, I think a couple of years ago, decided to give up drinking and various other things because she decided that. I don't think she described herself as an alcoholic, but she kind of definitely thought that she was relying on alcohol too much in her life, so decided to kick it, which I did for the whole of January.
Well done, you.
Yeah, that was an enjoyable experience. Speaking of enjoyable experiences, we now move on to the fourth album. This is by Rozi Plame, a British artist. Surprisingly, it's been around since the early 2000s.
No
way. I actually did a live session for Lauren Laverne back in 2012.
Cracking.
And this is her fifth or seventh album, depending on how you kind of count self-released things and officially released things.
Yes.
And this was she's also part of an alt folk band called The Kit, which are also quite popular with various people on Six Music. I think it's safe to say this is sort of a folky record, or perhaps alt folk would be probably more fair to it, given that it's certainly a lot more experimental, certainly in a kind of jazzy kind of way. On first listen, this washed over me so much that I couldn't remember a single thing about it. But and you knew there was going to be a but. I then listened to it twice in a row whilst I was sat doing a jigsaw last Saturday. Living the rock and roll dream.
Nice.
And suddenly things just started pulling me in, and I suddenly found myself beguiled by this. And it started with Prove You're Good, because there was something about it on the first couple of listens that was just gnawing away at me, and I couldn't think what it was that was not annoying me, but something about it just I was thinking, what is it? And then it just clicked that it was reminding me of Lazarus off Black Star.
Right. Interesting.
And it was almost, once I had that realisation, everything else on the record just suddenly kind of fell into place for me. And the kind of hypnotic nature of it, with its kind of simple refrains interlaced with kind of little sub melodies started pulling me in. I really like the little bits of kind of flute and sax and piano that just crop up in the background of the songs, particularly on stuff like Spot 13 and Green for Two. Particularly on Green for Two, there's a little bit of jazzy piano toward the very end of the song. So it's really great. And I absolutely love the synth in Painted the Room that kind of just takes over the track at the end, which I just thought was brilliant. That said, at the same time, I can also see this being a record that people might find annoying and dull, because of the way the songs are structured and it's lots of repeated things. I can see people finding it perhaps monotonous and soporific as well. I think they're wrong. But yeah, I this is the album that probably grew on me the most over the albums we listened to in the podcast. So as of this morning, I've decided possibly this is my favourite album of the podcast.
It's interesting you mentioned Black Star, because I didn't write it down, but I certainly thought it. It's not so much. Lazarus actually. Yeah, Lazarus is as well. There's also some of the other jazz numbers that are on that album. That particular Bowie album as well. I'm not thinking Sue, Season of Crime. I think you're right. I think it's Lazarus. Okay, let's scrub the last 30 seconds. Agree with you completely, Scott. Lazarus from Black Star is what was at the forefront of my mind when I was listening to this album.
Yeah, if we were professional and we were edited out stuff like this, it would sound brilliant when you would agree with me after me saying the thing.
Lazarus. Yeah. No, I went through a similar experience actually. There was something annoying me about this album the first couple of listens, but I think it was on the second listen it suddenly clicked. And it's a very interesting experimental album. Very that sort of continuous sequencing of songs as well. It doesn't go all the way through, but it goes 60% of the way through, and then it stops and then it starts again. And it was also made it quite a difficult listen at first, because you're just hearing a continuous piece of music that and I don't mean this derogatory, but it sounds very similar.
Yes.
But actually once you listen to it, you begin to hear the sort of the variation in the interesting synths and loops. The only real continuity being a drum beat. And the sort of her vocal, very restrained sort of vocal style. And the interesting point for me was when things actually then did slow down around the track. I think it's Saw or Spot.
Yeah.
And that just worked really well. And that's the moment I sort of got drawn in.
Yeah.
Is there's that constant drum beat at the beginning, and then it just sort of stopped briefly, and I was like, and then that enabled me to get into it. My favourite track was Blink, which is the last track of the album.
Yes.
Which again, so it sounds like we've had a similar experience with that. I'm not sure it's my favourite yet, but we'll come to that.
Right, because it's probably the next album. So the next album is, first of all, it's not an album, it's a mixtape.
Glad you clarified.
Yeah. And it's obviously a C90. Both sides of the C90.
Both sides. Every second.
Yeah.
Filled to the end.
Yeah. So we have 90, just over 90 minutes of a new British rapper called Clavvish, from Londonshire, and this mixtape is called Rap Game Awful. Debuted at number 4 on the UK album charts.
Nice. Good work.
So Pete,
here it comes.
What do we think of?
Oh, you didn't do it.
What do we think of Clavvish?
I thought you were going to say, "Is Rap Game awful?" Pete?
Well, I was trying to avoid the open goal that the artist has provided for us potentially.
I had the answer, and my answer was like, "Is Rap Game awful?" No, this album's all right. I mean, according to the album, Rap Game is awful, but it certainly sounds pretty bleak at times. But actually. Okay, let's tackle the thing that we discussed prior to the podcast. It's very effing long.
It is very effing long.
Because it's a 90-minute mixtape. But you know what? It's the length is probably the only thing that I really struggle with, because actually, yes, it is. actually really well put together in terms of this sort of style of album. I think perhaps where it also falls down for me is it's a little bit more Drake than I'd like in terms of, because life just really is fucking grim.
Yeah.
And you got the usual tales. I say the usual tales. The tales, gang warfare, going through the justice system, getting knocked down by the justice system, finding positivity and retreat in the justice system rather than being out in the streets and getting killed.
Yes, there's elements of that, yeah.
Yeah, so redemption there. And I think actually, really, the album, the real strength of the album is where it reflects the world that you're inhabiting as the listener and as Clavvish is as the artist. It really does bring you into that world, and I think that's where it really succeeds, because you are drawn in and you are living it as the tape continues. And so in that way, it does feel like a mixtape. So when you know anyone under the age of 40 won't get this, but when you put a mixtape together,
Yep.
back in the day, you want your listener, usually a mate or a girlfriend, to really be drawn into your world, and you soundtrack it, and that's exactly what he's done here. So in that respect, it's brilliant. It works perfectly. And there's even a little light or redemption towards the end, but in dark places. So I think again, it perhaps there could have been more of that, maybe. But I mean, I'm picking at straws here. I actually thought it was pretty solid.
I agree with I agree with most of what you said there. Really, I mean, I think the problem with it is the length.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the fact that it all ended up sounding a bit kind of one note for me.
Yeah.
Especially lyrically.
It's fair.
Yeah. As you say, it's the kind of knife, crime, guns, drugs,
it's the strength,
jail,
but it's also the weakness, isn't
repeat.
Yeah.
And I think that only...
It's strong lyrically,
Yes,
it's just repetitive.
Yeah. I think that only gets more noticeable and kind of worse, if you like, when musically the songs don't go anywhere either.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are a couple of pop moments, if you like, and some choruses and stuff like that. But mainly...
Not many.
Yeah, but mainly it is quite low... so again, quite sparse kind of musical backing, and then him just rapping away. And I didn't feel that over the course of 90 minutes there was much room to kind of breathe and have a rest between the next bout of it's grim. And that's despite the fact that splattered through the course of the record there are some quite funny sides and great lines. I made a note of one in No Interview, which is the streets aren't for everyone, that's why they made the curbs.
That's quite good.
Which I thought
was
absolutely brilliant. So yeah, it's for me the problem is the fact that it's just relentless, and I'm not sure that anyone would want to listen to the whole mixtape in one sitting.
I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
But
I didn't a second time.
Yeah. But as you say, but it's not because he doesn't have talent. And he clearly does.
Yeah.
But for me, there's possibly about 30 minutes of true quality here.
Yeah.
And it can be quite hard to get to those bits as you plough through 90 minutes worth of it.
It's tough because it'd be interesting to see where he goes, because let's not forget Stormzy started with a mixtape.
He did.
And within 2 years was headlining at Glastonbury. So, you know, it done well, and that's not that every black artist must now be Stormzy. I mean, it sounds like a privileged white guy saying that, but I think it'd be really interesting to see where he goes, because he's a talented guy, and lyrically, as I say, very strong, but also the weakness was in the sort of repetitiveness of the music, I guess. Yeah, that's a fair comment.
But definitely an artist to watch, keep an eye on.
Yeah.
It won't be the last time we hear of Clavvish, I think that's certain.
And that's good.
So we finish Oh, I've just unintentional pun there as well.
Oh,
Genuinely an unintentional pun. We finish with a Finnish artist. Oh my god.
oh my god,
Oh, that's before I've had anything to drink as well. Jeez.
that's really good though.
Yeah.
Well done.
So, Vilhelmani Valo, Finnish singer, songwriter, musician, best known for being the lead singer of gothic rock band Him. Back in the early 2000s. I think they split up about 2015, 2016. I do have one of their albums knocking about on CD somewhere, actually. Nice. Although I don't think I actually played it that much. I think it was one of those things that I bought because it had one really cool song on it.
Yeah.
I then played the rest of the album and it was like, yeah.
Oh, that's something that's of its time, isn't it? Buying a CD because it had one good song on it.
I know. What is interesting, I found out by noodling around online, and it's not. There's no evidence of it, particularly on this debut solo album. But apparently, he possesses the 8th highest vocal range of any known singer in popular music.
Good grief, really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Anyway, this album, that's his debut solo album. If ever there was a record that screamed solid. This is kind of it, really. Basically what we have here is a very well crafted, produced soft rock record that frankly could have been released, I would say, at any point in the last 40 years, and I'd have gone, yeah, it's alright.
It's alright.
Starts off quite strong. I think definitely the first half. It's definitely a side one record. This, I think the first.
Yeah.
I think the first four
Agree
or
with
five.
that.
First 4 or 5 tracks is kind of like, yeah, this is all right. Some good pop hooks going on. Run Away from the Sun. Particularly after a few listens, I found myself humming that as I was walking along the road. Title track and Forever Lost sound like The Mission.
Yeah.
I also liked the sound of putting on vinyl that's at the start of Love Letting.
Yeah.
Although I was less sure about the clear this is the audience participation at the live gig midsection.
This is it.
Which I kind of thought, oh, for fuck's sake. And as I said, second half of the record, a bit more kind of washing over me type rock by numbers type stuff. But yeah, fine, solid, harmless.
Yeah, I on those earlier tracks as well. I actually wrote down Psychedelic Furs and and in its more poppy, softer moments, almost Simple Minds in places as well. I'm thinking back to the 80s.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So it was more that in some of the places with a kind of a dash of metal thrown in for good measure. Yeah. This album was far less metal than I was expecting overall. Yeah.
It's definitely on the softer side of the rock.
So they're definitely on the softer side of metal. It's there for sure, and and I was expecting more, I guess. His vocals sort of almost maintain. You mentioned his vocal style. I was getting the softer end of Trent Reznor as well.
Yeah.
The calmer end of Trent Reznor, I should say, in some of the vocal style as well.
Yeah, I think him definitely had aspects of Nin in some of their output. So
indeed, and it's. I'm glad that things pick up again in the middle, and I know the first side is definitely the stronger side. I feel that it calms down a bit too much actually after the opening few tracks, and I'm glad when it does actually pick up again in the middle, because it really does verge on going into middle of the road saggy territory.
Yes.
But then it does fortunately pick up on the second side. Albeit I agree with your comments about that. I also like you. I like the first couple of tracks. I also really liked. Is it Zena? I can't say this. Zena Solitaire. That's the mostly instrumental one.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't like him, but it was great when he did Shut Up, and we just had a mostly instrumental tune. I was like, oh, good, that's a nice break. But yeah, it's definitely solid. Oh God.
Yeah.
So what do we think overall?
Overall, I think an interesting first selection of 6 records, really.
I would say nothing really grabbed me this time. sometimes I'm sort of fighting over 5 records to pick my best one.
Yeah.
This time I'm sort of fighting to pick one.
Yeah, like I said, my favourite album is the Rozi Plain one, but it's and that's as of pretty much this morning up until that point. If I go back over a week, it was kind of Margot and Billy kind of fighting out to be my favourite one.
Yeah, I think
so. Rozi's made a late dash over the last
there you go.
7 days to.
I'm gonna go with Margot
to take the thing.
Yeah, I'll go Margot. Price. Strays. That's going to be my one for this time.
That, interestingly, is the one that I bought on vinyl, and it's sat downstairs.
Very good taste, obviously.
Anyway, hopefully we'll be back
soon.
Yes, soon. Yes, we've kind of decided that even if we have to do some more remote ones, we need to be more remote with each other, Pete.
Oh.
We'll try and actually get through a year's worth of podcasts.
Nice.
This time around. So actually, when we get to the end of the year, we'll actually have some things to actually kind of go, oh, what's your album of the year? I don't know, and be that one album we listen to.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, which is why there hasn't been a roundup of last year's stuff. I've already forgotten last year as well. Actually.
I've got my list here.
I genuinely can't remember what came out. I genuinely can't remember what came out last year, though.
It's tricky. But my number one album was Wet Leg, apparently.
Oh yeah, that's
there you go.
Yeah.
Boom, done.
Yeah. I'm tempted to agree. Yeah. Okay. So the CTB. Again, not even started drinking. The CTTB. Actually, I'm just going to do extra T there.
You did. What's that for?
What's that for? Yeah. Come taste the band.
Yeah.
The CTTB.
Good grief, God. Practice.
Music podcast. Where's my daughter winning in? Album of 2022, Wet Leg.
Right, clearly we need to get some more alcohol in. Go on.
Yeah. And rugby.
Until next time. See ya.